both Jaden Ivey and Jalen Duren are extension eligible. So I'll phrase this question. Based off the first 25 games of the season, who would you extend and who wouldn't you extend? Let you go first, Sean.
Yeah, so I think when you look at the biggest storylines looming for the Pistons over the rest of this season and just going into the summer, to me, without a question, this has to be the biggest one. When you talk about the implications of where this team is going, which players that you're choosing to build around, and to me, like when you look at the, especially with we're about a third of the way through the season already, and there's still a lot more basketball to be played than there has been, but I think we're getting a decent idea of where these players are at and, like what these conversations could look like going into the summer. So for me, when you look at like both of these players and how you approach their extensions, I think it's a very interesting conversation because I don't think either of them are just outright the max extension, at least in my opinion. If Jaden Ivey comes out and has this, incredible second half to the year, we could be potentially having a different conversation. Me, I think when you look at like Jaden Ivey, between the two players of the way the question is phrased, I think without question, Jaden Ivey is the guy that you feel more comfortable extending just based off of his trajectory and the improvements and the development you've seen from his rookie year to now. I think with Jalen Duren, there's certainly been those nights where you can't help but be impressed by, his athleticism and look and wonder about his ceiling. But I think if we're being honest, and we could debate the reasons until the cows come home, but Jalen Duren has regressed and in some areas regressed even past where he was in his rookie year. And so, when you just look at like the way the Pistons approach these conversations, Anthony, when we were talking about it, almost to me, I view Jaden Ivey very, very similar to the way that Houston extended Jalen Green, where he got pretty close to, max money, but he got about 3 years with an option on the third. I forgot if that was on the team or the player side, but essentially it's a contract that gets a player that type of money, but also gives you flexibility going forward. It's you're making a commitment, but you're also giving yourself an out. And to me, if the Pistons are going to sign an extension between those two guys this summer, I think that's the way that you do it. And to me, like with Jalen Duren, at least this is my opinion, I think it's pretty cut and dry and it's pretty easy. I think you wait, you let him go to restricted free agency if you're not able to move him, and you let the league dictate what his value is. Because if he gets this great, if he comes out and balls and gets this big contract offer from another team, you'd be happy to pay it because he's looking like the player that you thought he could be. But if not, then that you're essentially getting a sense of what the rest of the league really thinks of his true value. So to me, that's where I'm at right now with those conversations. I'm fascinated to see what this conversation looks like on March, April, May.
Yeah, I'm definitely looking at what Jaden Ivey's doing right now, and I feel bad because I believe Jaden Ivey in his development, his ability to grow was stunted largely by his own organization last year. But to see him still kind of battle through that, have kind of the stretch that he did the last 15 games of the season, and we didn't know how much to extrapolate from that because the usage, the ball was just going to be in his hands a lot. But you go into this season and you see that he got even better over that stretch, and it's looking like this Jaden Ivey is at least here to stay. A lot of us can kind of see him being that number 3 on this team for a long time. And so I'm with Chuck Brewer. Depends on the number. I do see both of these guys here. Jalen Duren is somebody you probably take this until he's really proving the potential. He's probably somebody you take as far out to restricted free agency to see what's what. But when you think back on Saddiq Bey, when the Pistons knew, okay, even if we think he could be a decent player, we don't think he's a what he wants type of player. They worked to try and get him into a situation that he would get playing time and he'd be able to try and prove himself, and that they would be able to try and take a flyer on another young player as well. And so part of me does wonder sometimes as they get closer and closer to having to make these decisions, what happens with these young players. People, they got mad at us early on when Rod and I were kicking us around early, and we said, guys, it's not that we want any of them gone, but you can't keep everybody, one. And then two, you do have this thing called contracts, and they have dates on them. And when you do what the Pistons did, which is go out every year and get 2 or 3 first-round picks back to back to back, you're going to see every single year some of your favorite young players on your squad you're going to have to make serious decisions about in the league, where we're seeing players go and get a max contract or get $20 million a year or $25 million a year for pedestrian numbers and what we hope they can do in the future. And so it's going to be interesting to see how the Pistons handle this. It's something that I know a couple years ago I told people, this summer coming up, it's a big summer. The next summer after that, because they have 2 summers of eligibility, it's going to be interesting to see what the Pistons do here.
Yeah, I think you guys have laid it out really well. And I guess my answer to this question is like, it's Jaden Ivey, and it's not even close. And it's not even got much to do with Jalen Duren, his performance this season. It's more like, I want guys who can dribble past shoot. Look at Boston, you look at OKC. I'm not even talking, like, we haven't even gotten to Jaden Ivey's mentality, his work ethic. Like I said, you guys are around the team. You talk to anyone, like, you know, a lot of people say, like, oh, he's first in the gym, last to leave. Like, Jaden Ivey literally is that. Like, he's a worker, and what he brings is just so valuable. Yes, his playmaking, he might struggle, but, like, you know, he dribble pass, he can shoot. He complements Cade pretty well, especially. I think this season, like, I feel like the past week's been a down week for Jaden, but he's still hovering right around like 37, 38% from 3. You've seen real growth, and I think you invest in that. And just positionally, like, the thing with Duren, right, is like his actual rim protection, shot blocking has never been better. But, you know, his free throws have dropped off. And then there's the effort. And it's just, you know, it's been tough for him. It's been tough watching him at times this season, because I feel like I've seen him at times lose confidence, which I haven't seen before. And I think what we're seeing is these same issues have kind of existed with JD the whole time. But because this team is in games more often now, the warts are coming to the surface. We see that with Jaden Ivey. I mean, we see it with Cade. Like, how many times have Pistons fans spoken about Cade this season not being able to close a deal? And he's been doing that more recently. But now that these players are in more pressurized moments, and this is a good thing, we're finding out all these issues. But Jalen Duren, just with what we see right now, it's hard to probably invest in him long term. And he probably, you know, in terms of his value in his next contract, probably isn't smart to re-sign or extend unless things change dramatically. So, but for me, yeah, it's Ivy. I like, he's still got to, if it was seasons to end today, it's Ivy, no question. He's got to keep proving it this season. I'd like him to be more consistent. But I think the good Jaden Ivey this season has been really fun and is a player that you can invest in and be a really key piece going forward.
Yeah, I was honestly bought into Jaden Ivey. I talked to his father about it when I had him on for an interview. I think I was bought into him after all of the turmoil happened. And then when he was actually getting his shine and his shot to start and actually like playing key moments, he was one of the best players on the floor. He's not perfect yet. He's not a perfect player at this point, but you see the improvements on a night-to-night basis. Like, the jump shot obviously is there. We talked about his 3-level scoring. Defense, I think, needs to be talked about a lot more with him, because like, he's not getting hunted out by teammates or by opponents. He's been locking in. He's been giving great effort with his speed, you know, doing a good job of guarding without fouling. And he does a really good job of playing the passing lanes as well, too. Like, he just had a steal against the Knicks where they try to throw it over to him. He tips the ball. Cade gets it, and it's an outlet to Tobias for a dunk. He's had a few plays like that now. It was a couple against the Sixers a few weeks ago. Like, he's like, a lot of his improvements just, they leap off the screen, and they're so obvious that, to me, it's just a slam dunk to keep him if you were to decide between these two. Duren, it's so disappointing. It's coming from not even last season. Let's go back to where him and Cade were on Team USA's, you know, summer league practice team. And Cade wasn't just the one getting all the hype. Duren was getting a lot of that attention too. To me, I was sitting there thinking, okay, we knew Cade was going to be a star, but the fact that Duren looks ahead of schedule, he's bullying guys on the block. We know he's a rebounding machine. He's got great chemistry with Cade. This is huge, but to me, it's really disappointing to see the kind of steps backward he's taking, not even just defensively, man. The fact that, like, granted, I love Cade's triple-doubles. It makes me so mad that Duren is sitting there with 5 rebounds. I don't think he's had double-digit rebounds over the past, like, 6 games. Like, that's extremely alarming for somebody of his talent. And knowing the way that these teams play, like I saw against the Bulls where, you know, Vucevic was lighting it up, or the Bucks where they couldn't miss from 3, or Boston couldn't miss from 3. It seemed like their game plan was, how do we pick and isolate the center so we can get open shots? And that's all that they've been doing, and that's all that has been working against him. So Duren's got a lot of ground that he needs to make up. I think Ivy, he still needs to make improvements, but the work that he's put in and the improvements he has made so far have made a huge leap for this team, for his teammates, for JB Bickerstaff. And, Duren's got to come along for the ride, or I could definitely see the Pistons moving on without him at this point.
And I think with Duren, it's the fact that it's the same mistakes, on a repeated basis. And, I think a really good antidote for the Jalen Duren experience is, what we saw in the NBA Cup, like that Friday night against Indiana. He came out with a lot of energy and intensity, looked engaged around the rim, probably one of his, better overall performances. And then the next night happened where, you're like, where's Jalen Duren? Right. And even that game in New York against the Knicks, there's no reason why on a consistent basis he should be getting out rebounded by Cade Cunningham, Tim Hardaway Jr., and Tobias Harris. There's just with his natural rebounding talent and what we've seen. I mean, this is probably the best, raw rebounder we've seen come into the league since an Andre Drummond. Right. And for him just to not have, just to not have those nights, consistently is something where, it just makes you question. And, again, it's you understand that this is his third coach in as many years and that there's a lot of, different things you go through with that. But this isn't football where you're learning a whole new scheme or, an entire different philosophy. If you're you're playing drop, you're switching, or you're boxing out near the basket. You know what I mean? It's not this isn't necessarily rocket science in some areas.
But you do have to know that instinctually, when you look at his kind of career, college and pro wise, it's almost looking like Andre Drummond's. There wasn't a lot of development support for him at Memphis, just like Andre Drummond. He didn't even get coached by the coach that recruited him, at UConn. And then you come into the league and they were all saying the same things. Oh, they can do all these things, athletic. They can get out into the passing lane. They can defend all over the court and they can catch lobs. But they both said this, their projects. It's going to take some time and some of this. And with Andre Drummond, I noticed instinctually, he was one of those bigs, the only big that was top 10 in stocks, blocks and steals per game. And he was leading the Pistons in that for a long time. And we understand the rebounds. These were things that he instinctually could do very well. Whereas Jalen Duren, I think he's a good raw rebounder, but instinctually, it just doesn't seem like he understands how to play the carom sometimes, or the angles. Sometimes it like the boxing out aspect, you shouldn't allow somebody smaller than you to just walk right in front of you and grab the rebound. Sometimes I'm seeing Cade get triple doubles because he's just walking in front of Jalen Duren and grab the rebound. And so it's from that level of aggression, I'm hoping that the organization, as they're assessing now with this current coaching staff and development staff in place, that they're able to put this stuff on film, sit down with him, and now teach him, because I don't know who's done that for him in college or the program game to this point. Last year, I didn't get the sense that there was a lot of teaching going on. You see them working on things in the practices and in the shoot-arounds, but when you look at him this year, it's not necessarily regression. He just hasn't taken a step forward. And it's interesting with these two players, because Jaden Ivey is one that we're talking about it. He actually took steps forward. Last year, he showed something, and this year, he's taking another step forward, proving that at least from an individual player, if I'm going to trust you with an extension, I want to know that you can go into the offseason and come back better. I want to know through the season that you can go through the ups and downs and still find a way to get better. Those are those kind of intrinsic things. If not, it makes it a little bit more tough to say, I can trust him with the investment. You look at some of these players in the league, they go with those investments and then they even put more into it. And they are locked into gyms all off season. And so from Duren, I look at him similar to Jamison Williams. I believe he's a player you want to have around, but it's a guy that has to do some growing up, a guy that has to do some development, a guy that has to understand his personal accountability in it. And for him, the unfortunate thing is he only has now a few more years to get that done. And it's not his fault that prior he had 3 coaches throughout in 3 years for his career. So it's unfortunate to a degree, but the NBA is not going to wait for you because there are millions of dollars on the line.
And I think that's I think that's why having a season like being able to wait out and let him get to restricted free agency, I think that is why that could potentially be one of the best things to happen to his career, because it does get it does light that fire under his butt, so to speak. You know what I mean? Do you want to earn that second contract? Do you want to keep playing? Do you want to prove your spot within Detroit? So Yeah, it's to me again, like I think he's probably been, like for the fan base, just from what I can tell, probably the biggest frustration point. And I think to Jack's point, it is because each game is more consequential that you're starting to notice some of those things. I just think the thing that you want to see through the rest of this season, and even just through, just through the rest of Jalen's contract in general, is that he's learning from those mistakes, that he's applying them to his game and getting better. Because even when the nights where he is locked in defensively, it's a lot of the dumb fouls, the bad decision making. Like a lot of the times, it's just playing himself out of the game because he's already in foul trouble.
Yep.
Yeah, I think the one thing, I think you guys just nailed this topic as usual. I would extend Ivy too. That's not a question. Each year he's developed something that I thought might take maybe a couple of years, and he did it in a very short amount of time. Didn't really think that he'd be able to shoot at such a pretty decent clip going into his third year. The thing with Duren that frustrates the hell out of me is effort. And I think at the end of the day, he picks and chooses when he wants to try. The Pacers game, I think, Sean, you mentioned it. He was locked in, blocking shots. But it's an effort thing at the end of the day. At the first 6 minutes of the in-season tournament against the Bucks, I thought we had a really, really good shot of winning that basketball game because Jalen Duren was locking in. He was blocking shots, but he got in foul trouble. And by the time he got back into the game, the effort was gone. And I think when you're 21 years old, effort should not be an issue that we come up here on these podcasts and talk about. It could be maybe he was out of position. Maybe he needs to work on this part of this game. With me, you got to show effort if you want another contract, not by the Detroit Pistons, but you're auditioning for all the other teams in the NBA. If they see the type of effort that you're giving in, you pick and choose when you want to play, that's a big red flag. And it might sound like I'm a little bit being harsh on him, but I mean, coming out of the draft, I think a lot of us, I didn't have the comps, but people were calling him baby Dwight Howard because of the physique and all that good stuff. But like at the end,
the Pistons called him Sean Kemp. The Pistons said that. They say
Dwayne Casey went on ESPN and called him Sean Kemp. Yep.
Yeah, like the effort, I think is the biggest thing I'm looking at. I'm like, in the Knicks game, Josh Hart's shooting free throws. I literally screamed at my TV. He let OG Anunoby get the rebound and score, and he's just looking there. He's not paying attention. Like, stuff like that, like, I'm not surprised JB Bickerstaff plays Isaiah Stewart for extended minutes, and it's longer than 2-3 minute spurts. Sometimes it's 10-15 minute spurts, and he lets Isaiah Stewart fall out of the game because, I could maybe count 4 games this year where he's actually given effort and locked in for, a full 40 minutes this season.
Yeah, how many possessions have we seen where, the Pistons miss a shot or they make a shot and Duren is trotting up the court and up the opponents are getting an easy layup just because you don't get back. Like, that is completely unacceptable, man. And to me, I think we're all kind of speaking the same. The effort that we're speaking on is on the defensive end. I don't know if he's ever going to become an offensive anchor. They don't play him like that. And I think he's effective enough just being a lob threat for Cade. Cade is one of the best passers in basketball. He can throw it to him at any point on the floor. And I think that's valuable to have. But defensive effort, that's not anything that's going to be tolerated. And we've seen JB Bickerstaff from coaching, little brief quotes, say things that show that he's getting a little frustrated with that. And it's everyone's starting to see it. It can't continue like this. And again, it's literally, to me, just defense at this point. Offense, I don't think has going to be that much of a stretch outside of what he does on the glass. I don't really think that's going to be something that demand too much of him from. So he's really got to get it together sooner than later.